All right, welcome everybody. My name is Leiden Faust. Welcome to the AI-driven building winning strategies with social signals. In the next 30 minutes in this webinar, we're going to share something with you that I think is pretty special, a very unique take on segmentation and a very fast way to understand who your customers are in a very low lift. And we are doing this in conjunction with our partners, Social Signal, and we are joined by Matthew over here at Social Signal. See if our slides get moving here. Like I mentioned, my name is Leiden Faust. I'm the CEO of Spatial, and this is Dr. Matthew Dunn. Welcome,
Hey,
Matthew.
thanks, Leiden. You've got a flower in your suit there? That's a pretty good pick, man.
You know what? I had a lot more hair when I got married, and so we're just going to go with that everywhere else we go.
Picture's out of date. Mine too.
Very good. Well, good. Let's go through a quick agenda today. First, we're going to talk about what Persona Live is segmentation, and then we're going to talk about one of the major problems with segmentations. This is how do I find out really quickly who my best segments are and actually activate on that? And that is where Social Signal comes in. Matthew will take you through what the Social Signal solution is and show you a few case studies. And at the end, we're going to share an offer with you. So real quick background on Spatial and Persona Live. I've been doing market research since 2012. And the way that Spatial started is I was doing market research for one very particular retailer, Zaxby's Chicken. If anybody is in the South, you probably have heard of this. And we were doing research in Nashville to find out where's the next place to put a Zaxby's Chicken. Pretty bad research trip because at the end of the trip, we went to an area that we thought was going to be great for Zaxby's Chicken. Demographically, it had totally changed. And I ended up getting held up by gunpoint in front of my Airbnb at the end of that research trip. That was pretty awful. And all my research was fluff and not useful because the people demographically that we expected them to be, they just weren't those people. This is what started the interest in Persona Live. One, we wanted to understand who people were, not based on just their demographics, but how they actually behaved. And the second thing that we wanted to do is lower the amount of time it takes to go from I have researched a little bit about a customer, I have an insight, to I actually am activating an audience and doing something with that information. And that is why we created the Persona Live segmentation. Since then, we scale it to a number of retailers, primarily with physical locations. We have a number of different partners. And now there's over 750 companies that are using our segmentation to rank, reach, and resonate with their best customers. And we are introducing one of my favorite partners today, which is Social Signal, which is a totally unique way of ranking and understanding customer profiles. Just a little background on how these are developed. We use 3 factors when it comes to segmenting every single address in the United States. 1 is social media. What do they follow? What do they hashtag? 2 is where their mobile device goes. What types of retail are they showing up at? And the last thing that we're using is individual demographic records, age, income, marital status, etc. All that flows into the Persona Live segmentation to create these 80 segments. Now, the name of the company is Spatial, so everything is geographically related. This always ties down to an address. And I'll give you a sense of what those segments look like. Like I said, every single address is classified into one of these 80 different segments. And then once you know your segments, you can pop in there and see the social topics that these people are talking about, the type of retail that they visit, their age, income, marital status, the types of websites, the households. And that's just the basics of it. You can really dig into in-store visitation to see any types of retail that they visit, the brands that they follow on social media, the channels where you can reach them at if you're doing marketing, social media topics, influencers, web visitation, and demographics. So lots of insights. But none of that matters if you can't understand first who is my best customer in a really fast way. And that is where Social Signal comes in. And they have developed something that from the first time I heard of it, it was unbelievably innovative to me, and it works extremely well. I am so excited for you guys to see this. Matthew, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Leiden. Background, folks, we've been partnered with and working with Spatial for well over a year in the development of this. And I think this is the first live webinar to talk about it. So thanks for the opportunity, Leiden. We're pretty excited. In contrast with Gunpoint Leiden here, the perspective we brought to it from the very beginning was what's the digital and online marketer opportunity here to understand who your customers are. Like the richness of Spatial's data set for the decisions like where to actually put your fried chicken place is wonderful. But the minute I heard about the data set, I thought this is a huge opportunity to really address what I see as one of the fundamental broken pieces of the digital marketing world and digital marketing ecosystem. Look, for 10, 15, 20 years at least, the sort of unspoken thesis about digital marketing is if I save enough details about you, my customer, over time, I'll get to know you. I'll start accumulating first party data. First website visit, I don't know anything about you. If you sign up, oh, wow, look, I got your first name. The trouble is, it's a broken thesis. It's very broken. And in fact, Gartner backs me up on what's broken about this, which Leiden will have on the next slide, and says that only 14% of companies have actually achieved that 360-degree view of the customer. Side note, we're up to 20 states in the US with state-level privacy legislation. We don't want companies saving up our details to build up that understanding necessarily. At the same time, if surveyed, we'll say we want personalization, we want more personal handling, we want communication that's specific to our needs. So it's kind of a what are we going to do about this bottleneck? So once we got to look at Spatial's data set, we asked the really hard question: how can we start connecting digital marketing data into this rich yet anonymous view of the consumers? Would you mind jumping to the next slide, Leiden? Not that one, that one. That's the one there. So here's the gist of the technical means that we've built to connect any brand in the world into the spatial persona segmentation model. We can take website visitors and segment them from the minute they land. We can take an existing customer list, parse through it surprisingly fast, and say, here's the segment makeup of your customers. We can take email signups and do the same thing. We can take email opens and do the same thing. We can take API calls from other systems or apps or something like that. And again, bounce it off the segmentation model and say, that's the right one for that touch. That's the right one for that touch. That even leads to some kind of fun outsides. I think it's one of the first times I wowed you a little bit, Leiden, was when I sent you an email and you and your colleagues saw different things when you opened it based on your segments. Yeah,
based on the segment. That's
yeah,
right.
based on the segments. Remember that as well. Where we've got more data, we can get even more tightly calibrated. But even if we're out at that sort of household and neighborhood level, instead of people being digitally anonymous from minute zero and frequently into year number 3, we can get an idea of who those customers are from the get-go and really start bringing the power of the spatial persona model to bear on a better, richer, more personal conversation without saving 1,000 details and trying to knit all of that stuff together. Second piece of that, would you mind jumping to the next slide? I don't think outside in and inside out's the best nomenclature, but you work on slide decks, you come up with stuff. Outside in, we can connect to your website, your email, your whatever else, build up a view of your customers, and then basically connect through the persona data and tell you very specific, actionable things in addition to give you a picture of the segments. We can tell you which influencers your customers are paying attention to. We can tell you what other brands they're hanging out in based on their mobile data. We've also done the same thing from inside the spatial data set and surfaced that same level of actionable insight and very specific segmentation for literally thousands of companies and entities that Spatial already knew about. So whether you're not connected in this data set now or you're already there, we've got a whole bunch of insights about your consumers, your digital consumers, to bring to bear on talking to them better, on serving them better, on doing better business with them. Should we go to the next slide, maybe? Yeah, let's do some specifics. So here's a case study, customer X. Oh, yeah, I remember these guys. So this is an example where a consumer-facing company that engaged us said, well, we've got a customer list. And we said, what kind of detail do you have in that customer list? Well, kind of the basics. We have email addresses, we have zip codes, and we do have a value metric. In their case, it was a lifetime value. Didn't have it on 100% of the file, but on most of them. So we were able to take the PII out of the mix to begin with, which is pretty important. We helped them go through military grade encryption of the email addresses, so they didn't hand us email addresses. They hand us hash email addresses, zip codes, lifetime value, and a couple of other measures, and we parsed that all through the match into the persona data set. Let me explain how to read this bubble chart really quickly. Left to right is how does this brand index against the U.S. population for each segment. In the case of this brand, that segment A01 used to be called Midas Might, right, Leiden?
That's right.
I forgot the new moniker.
You got it.
They love this brand. Look at that index of nearly 600 versus the U.S. population. A01 loves this brand, but A01 doesn't spend as much as G01, G02, G03. The vertical axis on this chart is what's that lifetime value spend. Those guys in G03 spend almost 2x as much as the average customer with this brand based on their own data. Size of the bubble, by the way, is the proportion of that particular segment within their data. What I love about this, because I'm a data visualization geek, as you can tell over my shoulder, what I love about this visualization is now you're having a concrete discussion about something that everyone can look at and saying, what are we trying to do on this landscape? When you're having a strategy discussion, you really need to talk about the ground that the battle is happening on, right? Are we trying to move this bubble up? Are we trying to move that bubble over to the right? Are we trying to make this bubble bigger? Very concrete discussion. And for this customer in particular, I remember when they came to us, they said, our customers are old and wealthy. And when we've done the analysis, we said, well, the old and wealthy customers like you a lot, which is probably why you think that. But your quote unquote best customers are actually younger, spend more, and they already like you a whole lot more than the guy walking down the street, like G01, G02, G03, and that's a relatively young family in the persona data set. They already over-index, but they really overspend. That's a group that's a real opportunity for this particular brand, and we were able to give them this view of their business in something like 4 or 5 days. Here you go. Let's have a really concrete conversation about your marketing strategy. So that's one outcome of connecting data into the persona data set without running around with clipboards and getting held up in front of Airbnbs to try and find out about your customers.
Matthew, how long did this process take for them to be able to get this graphic to use that?
The biggest obstacle is usually who can get the file put together. And we've had customers say, oh, no problem. We'll dump our entire customer list and send it to you. We're like, hang on a second. We actually don't want that. Let us help you with encryption and hashing so that you can send us stuff that does not put any of your customer data at risk. That's usually the biggest delay. The actual processing, matching, visualization, if someone jumps on the webinar, the offer at the end of this webinar, we'll give them this kind of view of their business off their website traffic in a month. If you've got a customer list and you want to talk about that, we can do that in a week or less.
If you guys have any questions about this, I forgot to say at the beginning of the webinar, we have a chat down at the bottom. We'll take Q&A at the end. So any questions about this, go ahead and hit that chat and you can start putting those in.
There you go. Yeah, next one. Oh, live customer. I love this one. Helitech is a company, I think they're based in closer to your neck of the woods in the Midwest, Leiden. They fix basements. It's too bad they don't operate in North Carolina right now. Helitech is growing rapidly and they're expanding into new markets, and they wanted to understand their customer base and get better at their targeting. We did the same kind of value analysis and bubble chart that I showed you for that other customer. But we've also put what we call a beacon on their website, literally one line of HTML that's sitting on their website. Every single website visit gets segmented and recorded. So they can actually look live and see how their website traffic is working against that strategic view of their business. What I like about what's happening with Helitech lately, at least, is that their 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 meatiest, most interesting segment, sort of high up right, is the one showing up on their website the most. So that tells me their digital marketing is strategically pretty well tuned in. Next, we'll be working with them to do things like personalized content based on segments, which is also a capability that comes out of connecting digital touch points into the persona data set. Bonus points, we're able to heat map their traffic on the US map, which I snapshotted there. And I don't know if they operate in Las Vegas, but they sure have a lot of interest coming from Las Vegas, at least last month. So that's the guys at Helitech. Let's take a look at the next one, since we're ticking along and almost 20 minutes in here. This is Inside Out. This is data pulled out of the existing stuff that you wizards at Spatial know about the world. We've actually shared this with Wegmans, big grocery chain up in the Northeast, a long way from me. The problem that they articulated to us is that people are starting to really cross shop, really split their spend and buy this at one store and that at another store. And Wegmans is trying to figure out how to grapple with that. So we asked them who they thought of as a big competitor, and they mentioned the brand Aldi. So we dove into the data that we've already got and said, well, this is kind of interesting. Like, there's some segments who do all their shopping at Wegmans just based on what I see in the chart here. But there's others where there's clearly kind of a conflict between brand loyalty and spend. Spend in this case is derived from household income. Wegmans and Aldi didn't give us their LTV or grocery cart data yet, but this gives them an idea where to start looking and where to start tuning their loyalty program and perhaps their marketing and messaging, rather than just saying we're frustrated by being cross-shopped and we think people are going to Aldi's. Like, they are. They are. There's also, I don't have that chart here, but we did a similar analysis for a cosmetics company, and we came back and said, it's funny. We looked at the segments that you over-indexed on, and quite a number of them seem to have a relatively high proportion of Hispanic Americans. And they said, oh yeah, our CMO 4 or 5 years ago really focused on outreach to that set of customers. It was still in their data. It still showed up. And the persona model, I went, beep, 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 take a look at this. It was fascinating to see that pop out and to get the validation from the customer saying that's real. Like, we know they're in there. We'd kind of forgotten about focusing on them. We said, you might want to think about that in your marketing, in your website personalization, your outbound email, and so on. Is that what we've got for case studies and cross-shopping? I think so.
We got one more, don't we?
We got one more. I think we got a where's the beef kind of slide, right? So, okay. And so what? Is this just interesting, or can we actually move the needle? So one of the earliest customers for Social Signals, Hungry Girl, I love those guys. Hungry Girl is a great big email newsletter. They send out something like 1 million emails a day. And they thought that their subscriber was a boomer, and if I recall it, boomers and rural. And they thought that because they'd done a survey. You know who has time for surveys? Right? Boomers have time for surveys. We put a beacon in an outbound email campaign. And we also analyzed their customer list. And we brought those two segmentation studies, which married up quite closely, and said, that's actually not your customers, guys. Like, you've got plenty of them, but AO2, BO2, CO4, if I recall right, I'm doing that from memory, were actually the top right segments for them. So they changed their rate card, their advertising rate card, less than a month after we started working with them. Obviously, they raised it because the consumers that they're reaching with those emails are actually quite different than what they thought they were. And advertisers want to know who am I getting to with this? And different segments demand different kind of premium for an advertiser. So it netted up pretty darn well for Hungry Girl, we think. So that's a live
Yeah.
case study for you.
And little context on those segments, AO2, BO2, and CO4, they're all fairly high income segments.
Yep.
AO2 in particular.
Yep.
And so Hunger Girl assumes, because of how people have responded in a survey, that they have lower income, rural, and older readership lists. That just wasn't quite the case. The people that are opening those emails were actually quite valuable people
Yeah.
with fairly high incomes and quite a bit different than what they expected.
Yeah. Yeah. And what fascinates me about this still is that, one, as you guys intuited when you started building the spatial data model, how we act online isn't necessarily who we are according to a demographic profile. We're richer and more interesting than just the factoids about age, household income, and stuff like that. And we care about that stuff, and we express it online. And the fact that it's captured in the persona model, and that we're able to come back and say, you've got a lot of these, some of these, some of these, some of these, without having to spend 3 years doing a whole bunch of data modeling that falls apart the minute someone leaves, and without having to infringe on any one person's privacy. To me, that's a terrific solution to both sides of the digital marketing problem. And it's pretty much instantaneous, which is kind of a kick in the pants. So there you go. Actionable audience insights. I should have put a legible chart of this up here, but this is a fairly important last 3, 4, 5, 6 months from Social Signal. We've moved from what's the segment data for you, the brand, whether you're in the data set or whether you're connected with a beacon, through to what are the specific actions that indicates. We actually printed a graphic for one customer that showed them the stack ranked social media influencers by category for their brand out of the spatial data set. So instead of guessing or having the intern who happens to be hip enough to know the word influencer tell them where they should spend their time and money, they've got a specific data-driven reason to go invest in Instagram placement or ads or whatever else, because the data set says this person's really important. So that's actionable insights. Models from any digital touch point I hit with that bullseye chart earlier on. Website opens, one line of code, and your website starts telling you things just based on the people coming. Email opens, changing content, all that's technically feasible and surprisingly easy. And then we've got you connected into the persona data set. And as that keeps evolving and as the world keeps updating, it gives you a live view of who your customers actually are. That's built from nationwide data, not just your view of the traffic that you happen to get from your interactions with them. There you go. Special offer. We need an 800 number for this. So if you're watching the webinar, thanks for spending your time here. We appreciate it. If you're interested in learning what your website traffic can tell you about your customer base, we'll help you do that. We'll provision a beacon, a little snippet of HTML, tell you how to put it on your website. It typically takes about 4 minutes to do that. And then within about a month, we'll have accumulated enough to give you the actionable insights, groups, families, segments, and even a bubble chart like the one we were discussing earlier to tell you what your website traffic indicates about your customer base. And if you want to do that in email instead, we can probably figure that out as well. So to get that, there's my email address, Matthew@SocialSignal.ai. Put autopilot webinar offer in the subject line, and we'll get back to you too sweet.
Great.
Open it up for questions, Len?
Yeah, we got a few here in the queue. If you have more, go ahead and put those in. Maya, is this available for the Canadian market? I'm sorry, it is not just the United States market. That's one that I think I could take. There's another one. How do you swap the imagery on an email?
Deep dark magic. When an email is opened and fetches an image, we resolve the customer segment at the moment of the image request and send back the matching image provided by the marketer. So if you're the customer we're looking at with Geo1, Geo2, Geo3 as a high priority, make a custom hero image and say deliver this one for Geo1, Geo2, Geo3, and we'll do the same thing with a hyperlink if they click. Kind of wild stuff.
Cool. Hopefully that made sense for that. The other question here is, how do you pick up the segment from a website visit?
The simple level of that is the technology we've deployed, which sits at the network edge, not in the central cloud, about 250 data centers globally. We take the request for the beacon and resolve that to a zip code, and then we've got the data to accurately, proportionately bring back segment codes for that zip code. It's super fast. It's like 20, 30 millisecond round trip to bring the payload back saying, here's the segment for that visitor. We also record that, which starts to give us that accumulated picture for example, that I showed on website traffic from Helitech.
So that's how you're getting the overtime picture
Yeah.
by segment.
Yes.
And this is a question actually for me. What does network edge mean?
So you're used to thinking in terms of cloud, right? You've got, Google's got data centers in 8 places in North America or something like that. Amazon has data centers at X number of places in North America. Network edge is even more widely distributed data centers. We happen to focus for a lot of sound technical reasons on working with Cloudflare for this particular deployment. Cloudflare's data centers are within 50 milliseconds of 95% of the world's internet population. So really close, really fast. It means deploying technology to a lot of different places rather than one place, but it means that the time penalty of getting a request and a response drops way down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And this is one of the things that shocked me is how quickly it can pick up a segment in a perfectly privacy compliant way and change the experience for the user. It sounds like on both the website and email, which is amazing that this can do it at that speed. And then they can also, it's insightful for the company to get these reports and make decisions based off of it. So that's super powerful.
And we also think it's better for the consumer. The time it's going to take for a company to get any idea who I am based on me maybe signing up, maybe reading emails, maybe buying something or something else, like that's a very long road. And I'm not spending all day trying to tell them who I am. I'd much rather give them a surprisingly accurate bucket, just like this, and say, if you build on that and we have a longer term relationship and I want to fill out a profile, great. But the persona model gives such a rich baseline to start that conversation and deliver the kind of personalization that consumers say they want without putting together a file that puts them at risk in any way.
Cool. We got no more questions here. Hey guys, I'm super excited for you to see this. I think this is an amazing offer. You can know your customers immediately, 30-day time period, drop a line of code on your website, and you are going to get this level of insight. So just email that email address on there, Matthew at SocialSignal.ai. Thank you so much for joining with you. We will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Leiden.
See you, Matthew.